Joe, it's good.
It's great. Hi. Take off this jacket. It's warm in here.
Stand right in front of it for us.
You'd like to do that.
Yeah, just come across the whole
Right underneath, yeah.
That's it, that's it.
Check the other side.
Just a little further across for us. That's it.
Last few years, and or I suppose for Australian audiences, where have you been for the last decade?
Well, we've been actually we toured. We've been touring. We did like 52 cities last summer in the States and in Canada, and then we did Europe this year, and the States this year, and Australia this year. It's always a big commitment to get down to Australia. As much as we love it down here, it's one of those things that like you probably end up coming here about once every 5 years or so. You know, we're a little bit lax in coming down here. We didn't really do a lot of world tours in the last 5 or 6 years. You know. But before that, we did the Trash tour, and then we didn't really do a world tour after that. So, you know, we always look forward to it. Though my band had never been here before, so I told them they were going to have a great time down here because it's great audiences.
Alistair from Channel 9 Newsroom. Does time and age mellowed you at all?
Well, when you see the show, I don't think you'll see too much mellow up there. This is probably the highest energy show we've ever done. This show is the Alice Cooper Rock and Roll Circus or Carnival, 1997, and there's always been something to me that's been really odd about carnivals, about the whole carnival. You know, where do these people come from? And our show's always had that sideshow kind of attitude to it, and so I thought the combination of the two is good. We have, you know, it's clowns, it's everything, you know, and of course there's a storyline going on through the show, kind of a freak storyline. And that's coupled with all the hits. We do, you know, an hour and a half show, and you do as many of the hits as you know. You can't do all of them because there's 25 albums, so you really can't please everybody. But you do as many as you can, and so it's a high-powered, very high-energy, hot, sweaty show. It's fun.
I understand you found a new religion. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Oh, it's an old religion. It's about 2,000 years old. No, I grew up as a Christian. My dad was a pastor, and my wife's dad's a pastor. And, you know, just to kind of set it straight, you know, I'm not a Christian artist. I'm an artist that's a Christian. So I don't do Christian music, but I do rock and roll. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing rock and roll and being a Christian. When you see the show, again, I think you'll see what Alice has never been anti-Christian or political at all. Our emphasis has always been on sex, death, and money. The three things that more people care about. I mean, if you think about any commercial, or from Shakespeare up to anything that goes on now, what's the three things that people go to see at the movies, theater, books, cartoons, sex, death, and money? Those are the three greatest targets you can do satire at. Religion and politics. Politics is the most boring thing in the world. I think politics ruins rock and roll.
Do you still revert to the bad boy of rock off stage?
I don't think, you know, I never was that bad off stage. I used to abuse myself pretty much with alcohol. But my onstage persona was I always thought that there was enough rock and roll heroes and not enough villains. And so I created Alice to be Captain Hook. I wanted Alice to be that character, and he still is, you know. But I think the villain usually steals the show. And so that's why Alice has always been that sort of tongue-in-cheek. You know, he's sort of everything that makes America horrible and great at the same time. He's a real Frankenstein kind of character.
So the ad that we see on TV for a tummy settler is pretty true to Alice Cooper off stage.
What's this now?
The ad that we see off TV for a tummy settler. I keep forgetting that I did that. Everybody keeps yelling Rennies at me, and I'm going, oh yeah, I forgot about that. That was good. That was fun to do, though. That was certainly using Alice to his best. We do upset a lot of people's stomachs. Following that whole thing through, you've been at pains throughout your career to say that there's two personas. One is the stage persona, and one is the private.
Sure, I think I'm probably the most successful schizo in the business. You know, I think it's very important to be a schizo in this business. If you have to be if you have to be the character that you are on stage, you're not going to last very long. Didn't work for Jim Morrison. It didn't work for Jimi Hendrix or Keith Moon or any of those guys, and they were all friends of mine. The character you portray on stage is a really bigger-than-life, insane image. And he does things that normal people doesn't do. But off stage, you can't live that life. I don't live in a big black house with a cloud over it, But people want to believe that. On stage, yeah. That's what Alice is. When I play Alice, yeah, absolutely. But off stage, no.
So does that mean you were never one to trash hotel rooms?
I never did. I used to watch Keith Moon trash them, and I just was never much into that. I was too tired usually after a show to trash a hotel room. Most good bands were too tired to trash their hotel room. I didn't want to spend the money to repair them. The Who had a lot of money, though. They could smash anything up.
That was Nick Bennett from Channel V. So an artist like Marilyn Manson, who I assume lives and breathes and is what he is off the stage.
Oh, yeah. Right.
How long do you
Wait until somebody finds out he's a great bowler. Okay, all of a sudden, and he goes shopping. What are you doing in a grocery store? You're Marilyn Manson. No, I heard that too. He always says that Alice, doesn't really live his image. And I'm Marilyn Manson all the time. Yeah.
Was it weird for you, like you've got kids now and your wife and you live in a pretty respectable neighbourhood, but it would have been tough at first, people would have thought, here's this weird guy with the black t-shirts and the kids who have got in-turn toenails and kooky guy moving in next door. What did they think of you?
I've lived in one place for almost 25 years now. I've lived in Beverly Hills, and I was in my neighborhood. I was the straightest person there, In Beverly Hills, you can't out-weird Beverly Hills. But in Arizona, again, I've never had a problem with separating Alice and myself. When I was an alcoholic, I had a problem with it because I thought that I had to be this guy all the time. I had to go to bars and get in trouble and get thrown in jail all the time. Then I realized that I was either going to be in an insane asylum, dead, or in jail all my life, or in a hospital, because the character's too intense for real life, And when I was an alcoholic, I lived through a lot of craziness trying to be that character. But look, I'm 49 now. I'm in better shape. I'm in the best shape of my life right now. I go up and do a show, an hour-and-a-half show, and better than I could 20 years ago. And it's a better show now. So I think I did the right thing.
I'm the Australian songwriter, and off that line of questioning a bit, how would you compare writing songs with the Alice Cooper band back in the old days and the musos that different tours, different albums that you work with now?
It was, of course, in the old days, it was everybody sat down and started working on a song. And everybody kind of contributed their own thing, and that's really how it worked. Mike Bruce and I wrote a lot of songs together because he was basically the tune master in the band, and I was the lyricist. Dennis, we wrote a lot of songs off of Dennis's bass lines and some songs off of Neil's drums. Bob Ezrin came in, and he was sort of our George Martin. He kind of like really gelled the band together as far as giving us a sound. But when I worked with other writers, I worked with Chris Cornell from Soundgarden on the last album, and I've worked with John Bon Jovi. I've worked with lots of different people, and there's no mystique to it. People seem to think that we say that it's a big studio and it's a hush hush and nobody's allowed. It ends up you sitting down in somebody's living room with a pad of paper and a small little tape recorder like this and a guitar. And if the idea's there, the idea's there. If not, you just sit there for hours laughing about stuff and you don't get anything. But every once in a while, something clicks and you really get a good idea. But I hate to demystify the songwriting process, but it's basically a lyricist and a musician sitting there writing a song.
Russell Stewart for 2SER. You've been quoted saying that you like to see the absurdities in life. What's the most absurd or funniest experience you've ever had on tour?
Oh, there's so many things that's happened. We decided that we were going to shoot Alice across the stage in a cannon because we had done everything. We'd electrocuted him, we'd hung him, we'd cut his head off, and we gotta shoot him across the stage. And we bought this huge cannon. We had it made 20 feet long. And, it was a big cannon. And it worked great in rehearsal, you know. I mean, they'd load me into this thing, and of course the trick was I got out, and there was a dummy inside, and they'd shoot the dummy across the stage, and by that time I'd walk out, hey, look what I did. And we got it on stage, and they loaded me in, and they lit it, and the audience was waiting in this. Boom! It went like that, and the dummy came out about that far. And just hung there, just like, you know, and at that point you just kind of kick him aside, and you have to be Clouseau, you know. And this happens right in front of 30,000 people. The audience, of course, loved it because it was Spinal Tap at its best. You know, it was real Spinal Tap. It wasn't like something you could write. And I think the audience enjoys seeing mistakes on stage. You know, I tell my band, I said, there's no such thing as a mistake. If you trip over your amp, just make sure you trip over your amp again 5 minutes later, and they'll think it's part of the show. You know, you can always cover a mistake up. You can't cover a cannon up, though. I mean, that was just... We ended up selling it to the Rolling Stones. And Jagger saw it. He said, oh, I love that. And we said, oh, it works great. You'll love it. It's terrific.
Alice, you must have a big shed, a garage full of all this stuff.
We have a warehouse. You know, we have our own sort of Hall of Fame warehouse of stuff. You know, for over the years, 25, almost 30 years of props. Brian Nelson, who's here a little while.
Put it as part of the Mardi Gras.
Oh yeah, we should. Well, you know, the Hall of Fame's got the guillotine, and in Cleveland, and we a lot of our stuff's in the Hard Rocks around the country and stuff like that. But yeah, some funny things have happened, especially when you're trying to do a big production, you know, and great things. I'll tell you one other thing that happened. I had this great sword, the sword that actually was Errol Flynn's rapier. You know, I went out of my way to get this one from his sword instructor in Hollywood, and he gave me the sword, and it was Errol Flynn's. And I went, oh. In fact, I'll have it on stage this tour, and I show the audience, you know, how good I am with this thing, you know. And at one point, I stick it in the stage to show them it's real. And I was looking back here, and I went, and it went right through my leg, and it went right through the muscle, stuck out here. And you know, when your adrenaline on stage is so high, you don't really feel it. I mean, I felt a little like that, and I took my hands away from it. It was like, and the band, you know, they knew it wasn't a special effect. The audience thought it was. They thought it was a trick, and the band went, oh, and I went, and you know, at the time, pulled it out like a real macho guy that I am, you know, and threw it away, and it didn't really hurt. And they finished the show, and I got off stage. Oh man! And they said, we have to get a tetanus shot. You know, and I'm more afraid of needles than anything in the world, you know. So I said, I just stabbed myself. I'm not going to get a shot, you know. So I took a bottle of whiskey and just figured that's what James Bond would do, you know. He just pour the whiskey on there. And the next day, I mean, I got back on stage, it was gone. No pain again, off stage. It just killed me for about a month. But I mean, I've still got a scar that goes right through my leg.
How bigger do you think rock shows can get? You two have set this amazing level of greatness, and Rolling Stones keep perpetuating.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. Yeah, I better grab some hair. Introduce and welcome Alice Cooper to you.
I know all you people. Hi. Can I have one of those?
Yeah, sure.
Oh my God. Great. Hi. Got this jacket. It's warm in here. Well, I brought the good weather with me.
That is why I was that's it, thank
How do you get that sponsorship deal?
You know, after hard day of interviews, I always...
standing up near the sign?
Sure.
Thanks very much.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. That looked better in person.
Just come across a little more in
Come across
front
the
of
flash.
it. Just stand right in front of it for us.
You might can do that.
Just a little further across for us. That's it.
Okay, we might stop photos now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You want to start the questions?
Give us some, or I suppose for Australian audiences, where have you been for the last decade?
Well, we've been actually we toured. We've been touring. We did like 52 cities last summer in the States and in Canada, and then we did Europe this year, and probably end up coming here about once every 5 years or so. You know, we're a little bit lax in coming down here. We didn't really do a lot of world tours in the last 5 or 6 years. You know, and our show's always had that sideshow kind of attitude to it. And so I thought the combination of the two is good. We have, you know, to do all of them because there's 25 albums. So you really can't do it to please everybody, but you do as many as you can. And so it's a high-powered, very high 1,000 years old.
This is new to you though, isn't it?
No, I grew up as a Christian. My dad was a pastor. My wife's dad's a pastor. And, you know, just to kind of set it straight, you know, I'm not a Christian. See the show again, I think you'll see what Alice has never been anti-Christian or political at all. Our emphasis has always been on sex, death, and money. The three things that cartoons, sex, death, and money, those are the three greatest targets you can do satire at. Religion and politics. Politics is the most boring thing in the world. I think politics ruins rock and roll.
Do you still revert to the bad boy of rock off stage?
I wanted Alice to be that character, and he still is. You know, but I think the villain usually steals the show. And so that's why Alice has always been that sort of tongue-in-cheek. You know, he's sort of everything that makes America horrible and great at the same time. He's a real Frankenstein kind of character. Schizo in the business, you know. I think it's very important to be a schizo in this business. If you have to be the character that you are on stage, you're not going to last very long. Didn't work for Jim Morrison. It didn't work for Jim. Spend the money to repair them. The Who had a lot of money, though. They could smash anything up.
Alice, Nick Bennett from Channel V. So an artist like Marilyn Manson, who I assume lives and breathes and is what he is off the stage. Right. How long do you get?
Wait until somebody finds out he's a great bowler. Okay. I mean, all of a sudden, and he goes shopping. What are you doing in a grocery store? You're Marilyn Manson. You know, I mean,
A pretty respectable neighbourhood. But it would have been tough at first. You know, people would have thought, here's this weird guy with the black T-shirts and the kids who...
But I mean, look, I'm 49 now, and in better shape. I'm in the best shape of my life right now. I'd go up and do a show, an hour-and-a-half show, and better than I could 20 years ago. And it's a better show now. So, I mean, I think I did the right thing.
I'm from the Australian songwriter, and off that line of questioning a bit, how would you compare writing songs with the Alice Cooper band back in the old days and the musos now?
It was, you know, of course, in the old days, it was everybody sat down and started working on a song, and everybody kind of contributed their own thing, and that's really how it worked. Mike Bruce and I wrote a lot of songs together because he was basically the tune master in the band, and I was the lyricist. Dennis, we wrote a lot of songs off of Dennis's bass lines and some songs off of Neil's drums. Bob Ezrin came in, and he was sort of our George Martin. But when I worked with other writers, I worked with Chris Cornell from Soundgarden on the last album. And I've worked with John Bon Jovi. I've worked with, you know, lots of different people. And there's no mystique to it. You know, people seem to think that we say that it's a big studio and it's a hush-hush and nobody's allowed. It ends up being sitting down in somebody's living room with a pad of paper and a small little tape recorder like this and a guitar. And if the idea's there, the idea's there. If not, you just sit there for hours laughing about stuff and you don't get anything. But every once in a while, something clicks and you really get a good idea. But it's, I hate to demystify everything. We electrocuted him, you know, we hung him, we cut his head off. And, well, we got to shoot him across the stage, and we bought this huge cannon. We had it made 20 feet long. I mean, it was a big cannon. And it worked great in rehearsal, you know. I mean, they'd load me into this thing, and of course the trick was I got out, and there was a dummy inside, and they'd shoot the dummy across the stage, and by that time I'd walk out, hey, look what I did. And we got it on stage, and they loaded me in, and they lit it, and the audience was waiting. Boom! It went like that, and the dummy came out about that far. It just hung there, just like, you know, and at that point you just kind of kick him aside, and you have to be Clouseau, you know. And this happens right in front of 30,000 people. The audience, of course, loved it because it was Spinal Tap at its best. And I do have to get this straight, because I kept hearing in the press in America, well, you can't use snakes in Australia because of the horrible things you do to them. Our snakes live better than the band, you know. I mean, the snakes are pampered. They don't even eat rats; they eat mink. You know, I mean, they fly first class. And, I've never hurt an animal on stage ever, and I would never. First of all, you never want to hurt a python; they'll kill you. You know? Anyway, so we did have to we had to get snakes from here, and I just wanted to clear that up with the animals' rights people. I would never hurt an animal on stage.
You know that they're all extremely venomous, don't you?
What, the ones here?
They're all really venomous.
Oh yeah, they're. What, you mean the ASPCA or the snake?
Understand you.
Sorry, Garrett, sorry, from MTV. I'm just wondering, you're talking about 22 albums later and thousands of tours probably with this new one. Do you think audiences ever change?
You know, that I get asked that a lot, and it's funny because we were in Warsaw this year, and I was thinking in the middle of the show, if I didn't know where I was, if there was like a total time blank there, which happens every once in a while, and in the middle of the show, and somebody said, where are you and what year is it? I would say 1979 Cleveland. All black leather, long hair, yeah, Alice, that kind of thing. And I wouldn't have known I was in Warsaw, Poland. I think audiences react to what you give them. If you're going to be boring on stage, they're going to yawn and not have a great time and walk away and not talk about you. If you give them a great show, one thing that's really kind of unique about our show is we hardly have any violence in our audience, because the audience is too busy watching the show, so they don't have time to get in fights. You know, if they look away, they're going to miss something. And we've always had that kind of thing. We've had a very low rate of any violence in our audience, which is good. I think that's good. It's kind of a catharsis kind of thing on stage.
What's been the highlight of your tour so far?
Of this tour?
Yeah.
Well, we switched shows in the middle of this tour. We went from one show that we did in Europe to a brand new show that we're doing here. And I think going to this carnival atmosphere, I felt much more at home with it, because it was more theatrical, it was more fun. I don't exactly know what the clowns are going to do every night. We have clowns in the show, and I honestly don't know what they're going to do. Every night they do something different, and I tell them, don't tell me, so it can be more improvisational on stage. So I think it's fun to work in this like this, and like we threw some songs in that real Alice aficionados were going to be very happy with. You know, we're doing like Halo of Flies, songs that, you know, that they're, wow, I never thought I'd ever hear that again. Public Animal Number 9. From the Inside, you know, Be My Lover. It's not just the normal hits. We're throwing in some things that are really unique.
Has your audience grown with you, do you think? Do the 40 and 50-year-olds come along?
Yeah, they come along, but they sit way in the back.
Mm-hmm.
They sit way up and in the back, because I only see the first 20 rows, and that's generally kids. And the amazing thing is they know all the lyrics. You know, we're doing a song from before they were born, and they know every lyric. And that's, I mean, and now it's been worldwide. That's not just in the States, that's in Europe. That's, you know, it'll be like that here too.
What's your opinion of the grunge scene?
The grunge scene is rock and roll. I mean, you know, I think that a lot of times we try to create something new in rock and roll, so we give bands a new title. Okay, this is going to be grunge rock. Yeah, okay, that way we get a lot of mileage out of that. It's rock and roll. You take Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, any of those bands, they're rock and roll bands.
But it's faster than rock in the 70s, though, isn't it? It's a bit different.
It's more flannel. You know, less glamorous, and I think now you're going to see a big resurgence of of showbiz rock coming back. I think you're going to see, I think the audience demands that. You know, you're paying $30 for a ticket. I think if I was paying $30, I don't want to see a bunch of guys up there looking at their shoes, telling me how bad they have it. You know, I want to see something big. I want to see something that affects me.
What kind of bands do your kids get into?
You know, it's funny, I have a 12-year-old son. If you ask him his 3 favorite bands, other than Dad, of course, who pays his allowance, he'd probably say the Beach Boys, the Beatles, and the Four Seasons. And then I wondered about that, and I think probably because they were 3-minute happy songs. And kids generally like 3-minute happy songs.
Did you get mad when you first told her this?
No, because I'm a big fan of all 3 of those bands. You know, at the same time, I mean, I like Green Day, I like Rob Zombie. You know, I mean, I like a lot of the newer stuff also. I like Nine Inch Nails. But if I were going to sit down and actually drive along and play something, I might find myself putting on Pet Sounds and the Beach Boys, and then putting on Iggy Pop or something, and then finding myself putting on Sgt. Pepper. You know, you kind of always go back to classics.
Alice, just back to the Christian routine then for a bit. Did you have any problem with the fundamentalists in America not getting you?
Nothing but. Well, I went through the, you know, I mean, Marilyn Manson's living my life. You know, I mean, you know, all this hassle he's getting from that. The rumor mill is probably, it's really good for your career, and it's also really devastating for your career, because you spend 9 minutes out of 10 denying rumors. And then the really good rumors, you say, oh yeah, well, we like that one. And you create your own rumors a lot of times.
Some people rumour that you've taken up golf in a big way.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty good.
You're going to get a good round in while you're here?
Yeah, I'm playing a few times, 2 or 3 times here.
What's the handicap?
4.
Oh.
Yeah.
Alice Adams.
But I can play it too.
Adam Simpson from Channel 7. You've no doubt heard about Di's death. What do you think of paparazzi?
I've always kind of thought they were part of the show. I've really never had a problem with, you know, I think them climbing on the cars is kind of funny. Of course, I've never been in the situation that she's been in where, you know, I think the worst thing you can do is run from them. Take your pictures here, you know, fine, and then you walk away. If they're that, you know, I think the worst thing you can do is run, because then you're going 125 miles an hour. For what? So they won't get a picture? They're going to get the picture anyways. You know, I mean, I don't quite understand this whole scenario. I mean, I think I've never seen this kind of reaction since, like, Elvis. I mean, she was truly a pop icon, I think, in the world, and I really felt bad about it when I heard it. I couldn't believe it. But I mean, when you think of it, she was really a pop culture character, and the whole world is affected by it.
One last question. The last question. So.
The smaller club shows that people get a hero. How do you approach them as compared with the great big Alice Cooper show?
Well, it depends on the stage. If it's going to be, when we did the live album, we did Fistful of Alice, we did it in a very club about a little bit bigger than this room. Yeah. Because I thought that if you do a live album in a huge stadium, it's going to sound mushy. And it's going to sound 40,000 people screaming. It's going to sound really big and fat. Whereas if you take it to a small room, my favorite live album was 5 Live Yardbirds, which was done in the Marquee Club. And it was like you could hear the picks hitting the strings. To me, that was really personal. I wanted to hear that on this album. And that's why we went to that thing. And at the same time, it's really in your face. The music is right in your face. And there was no theatrics that night. It was just purely Alice rock, you know.
Okay, well, I think we need to finish now. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Always great to be in Australia. It's fun. And I plan to shoot 67, 69.
Hello. Thanks, man.
Doesn't mean I will, but I plan to.
Now.
Just turn your head just around, that's it. Just across a little further, that's it. Right,
This way, Alice, please.
That's the camera. Okay, thank you. That's it now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Where was this? The install.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's right.
Yeah, no, he's coming now.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, of course.
Do you want to take that for a little bit?
Yeah, it's all right. That's a very complicated camera now.
Oh, extremely complicated.
Very easy.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, sir.